Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Wealth Conversation podcast with me, Tsitsi Mutiti. I guide high-achieving women on their journey to build lasting wealth so they can prepare for an abundant future in every area of their life. I hope that today's episode will help you to transform your relationship with money so you can make the choices that will enable you to create the opportunities and lasting wealth that you desire. Let's get straight into this week's episode. My guest for this episode is Keji Castano. Keji, also known as the Wealth Encourager, is an encourager by nature and wealth advocate by nurture. She believes that soul health is real wealth, and that plays out into every area of our lives, relationships, finances, and mindset. The Wealth Encourager is not just her brand, but also who she is. The vision was birthed in her after going through multiple transitions in her own life and helping others navigate their own times of transition. The vision comes to grow in many areas through her podcast, workshops, IG Live interviews, and literature. One of the Wealth Encourager's greatest desires is to see people, especially women, living in freedom. And if she can be an usher aiding them to get there, then so be it. On a lighter note, she is a mix of nerdy data analyst by day, but a creative at heart. She is a Nigerian-born, London-raised, eldest of a family of all daughters and lover of chocolate. Welcome, Keji, to the Wealth Conversation podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
I'm really glad to have you as part of the lineup of guests that I've been having over the past few months, actually. So let's get right into it, Keji. Please, could you share a bit more about yourself and your background?
Okay, sure. I'll share a bit about myself, but you must feel kind of weird in this position because I've interviewed you, isn't it, actually, twice now. So it's like now the roles have completely changed.
I know.
But anyway, yeah. So my background, personally, I am a Nigerian British. I guess I put the Nigerian before the British. I'm a London native, should I say. I have a family, well, not my own personal family yet. I have 3 sisters. We get along amazingly. I work as a systems data analyst in the finance sector. In addition to that, I have should I call it an alter ego? Or I'm also known as the Wealth Encourager as well. A little bit more about my background. What else? Should I add some little trivia about myself? I enjoy chocolate.
So do I. I love it.
Yeah, I enjoy chocolate. I love to travel. I enjoy talking to people as well. Hence why myself, I've had conversations before because I like people's stories. There's so much more to people than the surface, and that's one of my passions: people and encouragement, and all things wealth as well. So that's just a little bit about me.
Fantastic. I love it. So tell us more about the Wealth Encourager. What is that all about?
Okay, so the Wealth Encourager, that's one of the many facets of who Keji is. The name is because, number one of my natural giftings and abilities is to encourage people. I think encouragement is very underrated. The words that we speak, like I do believe they're either life and death. And I think encouragement has a way just of injecting life, injecting drive, injecting resurrection into people and making them believe whatever they did not believe before about themselves and about their situation. So that's the encourage bit. And the wealth bit, because I would say growing up, wealth, and I'm speaking in the financial sense, had always been a sticky area for me, a bone of contention where I struggled with. I didn't grow up rich or anything like that. But as I got older, I realized wealth is just a lot more than finances. It encompasses our whole being. So yeah, that wealth encourager, I feel like I'm a means by which I encourage people to be wealthy, but holistically. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that because that's my philosophy as well. That there's so much more to wealth than money. And it's not to
Yeah.
say that money isn't important or you shouldn't aspire to be wealthy in the financial sense, but you should also consider the other areas of your life as well, because they all work together. They all, if they're working in harmony, then you do have true wealth. One of the other things that you do, Keji, is help people through transition. And I think that is also part of the wealth journey for many people, transitioning from one stage of wealth to another, etc. And I just would love for you to share what transition is and why you have focused on supporting individuals during this particular period in their lives.
Yeah. Transition is, in a very short blanket phrase, it's the state between one place and the next. And how on the IG lives that I do called Transition Talks, I often describe it as the place in between seasons in your life, because I just don't think we go from one season to the next. There's usually like an in-between bit of our lives between our summers and winters, between our autumns and our springs. And I believe every season of life has its own purpose, whatever we're supposed to do or learn. But the in between part is us kind of preparing for that, or reflecting maybe on the previous season. And the reason why I easily stepped into that in terms of assisting people through that process was because I've gone through a heck of a lot of seasons in my life, as most people have. And I just found the people who just came into my life, I was just assisting them. And I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, but I managed to get them from this state of transition into their new stage or into their new season. And I didn't realize I was doing it. And then they'll go on and do whatever next that what they had to do. But I didn't realize that I was actually, should I call it like a birthing partner, or or some sort of like life midwife anyway, that kind of got them through the transition stage to, okay, right, you're in your next season now. You can go and be great. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I remember when I was talking to you the first time and you talked me through this whole transition and the period between point A and B. And I had never thought of it like that. But when I coach people, I do talk about, understanding where you are now and where you want to be, and then coming up with the steps to get there. And that is actually transition, isn't it? You're transitioning from one stage to another. And we go through that every single time. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge it for what it is, because when you said, I help people transition and we deal with the space between where they are now and where they're going, it really made me step back and think, yeah, actually, there is that space in the middle that we have to acknowledge, we have to deal with. So when we get to the next stage, we can really fly and make the most of that new stage until we transition to the next one. And that's how you level up, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think ultimately the whole point of transition is to not reinvent yourself, but it's to give you an upgrade in identity. I think by the end of the transition, before you move into the next season, you're like, oh, I'm not the same person anymore.
Mm.
And it's in the working out with your mindset. And we don't just do new things, we become different people in a way,
So true. So true. Yeah.
in the process of getting there as well. So if you think about a flight, I'm going to try not to go on too much, but even before you go on holiday, there's different stages to it, from booking the ticket to getting to the airport, going through customs and everything like that. But you have prepared yourself. Mind you, when you get there, you're in for the culture shock and everything like that. But you prepare yourself though. You pack your luggage. You check the regulations and what you need to do in order to get there. And I think we should do that with our seasons in life as well. Prepare. Fair enough. You'll get your shocks when you get there, but at least prepare yourself.
I love that analogy. And I think it's something everyone does, even if it's not going on holiday, but when you're leaving home to go to work, for example,
Mm.
you make sure you've got, if it's your ticket or your car keys, there's enough fuel in the car. Yeah, we all do it in every single area every day, even if it's like I'm going to bed, I'm going to go and brush my teeth. You actually prepare for that
Yeah.
phase of brushing your teeth. So I love that analogy. In your opinion, what are the top three steps that you believe everyone should focus on when they are going through a period of transition?
Okay, so I think if I could just kind of try to knuckle it down. Okay, three steps. So if we're thinking about music, I'll say firstly, playback. Looking at the previous season, who was in your life in the previous season? Because you know what, you will find most certainly before you get to another season, there's usually been a drifting in relationships or location or probably mindset. There's something before you go into another season. There's sometimes this misalignment or with like an old way or old pattern. First and foremost, that's what I usually get people to do. Look at your previous season. Then if I think about music again, there's a pause as well. So where are you now? So we can look at different indicators that helps you to identify what exact type of transition you're in. Then if we look like the third stage is, let's just call it progress. Similar to what I guess I expressed with going to the airport, we look at the luggage that we're taking with us. Okay, this is just the last step. So the step before pause, that helps you with your mindset as well. So it's reconditioning your mind to actually think positively about this transition state you're in. And then the progress is that, okay, we've looked to the past, we've looked to the present, now let's look to the future. What don't we need? Let's get rid of excess luggage. Let's identify what relationships are starting to develop, what type of relationships you think are aligned with where you're going next. What do you need to be packing? What do you need to completely let go of? Is it America? They say TSA, and here we say, a security check. What are they gonna? What are contrabands? What all things like that.
I love those three steps. They're so simple and straightforward. The three P's.
Yeah.
Playback, pause, and progress.
Progress.
Yeah, I love the progress stage. I think well, I don't know, tell me, do you find that your clients find it a bit difficult, that last stage, the letting go, and also just identifying what's no longer needed?
Yeah, it's grief.
Ah,
It's grief and it's mourning as well. I'll give you my own personal experience. So there's a friendship I had, and I just felt something's just not fitting anymore with us. And we tried to have discussions, we tried to talk about it, but it just wasn't fitting. Then it got to a point where when it's not that you're necessarily bad people or anything like that, but where certain values aren't quite aligned or you have different priorities at that time, the more you try and mesh something together that is not okay for this next season, the more you have arguments and fights, and you can actually ruin what could potentially in the future you might be able to fuse back together. You can actually end up ruining that where there's but it's where we try and make things fit that aren't necessary for where we're going next. Not that you're burning the bridge, but you're just choosing right now not to cross that one until you might need to later on in the future. So sometimes that's really hard for people. Sometimes there's a location change. I had to have a location change. So sometimes even in a job where it's like nothing's necessarily wrong, but this job just ain't for me anymore. I'm not feeling this. I shouldn't really be here. And I tell you something, especially as a believer, sometimes God will really disrupt your plans. And sometimes it's not him, it's just the motion in which life is working in. And the more you're trying to hold on to things, you can end up being stagnant where you should have moved forward maybe months ago or years ago. It's very good to be very discerning of where you are and where you need to go next. Because sometimes we can get ourselves in cycles where we're and I don't and I heard this man once say, you can't manipulate your season. And I think,
Wow.
yeah, I thought that kind of shocked me. He said, season, this is coming. You cannot manipulate summit to move any faster than it's going to move. It's coming and it will be here. The thing is that you can try and still drag out your summer. I guess this is me taking his analogy a bit further. You can try and drag out your summer by still wearing hot pants and like little tops, but it's winter now. You're ill-fitting. You're not wearing the right garments at the right time.
I mean, wow. The picture you've put in my head of, wearing shorts in winter. It's yeah, it just drives that point home that sometimes we are forcing things. And I know in the past I have felt like, or at least asked myself, am I forcing things? Because everything just seems difficult when it's actually supposed to be easy. And when I did let go and just accepted that, okay, I need to move to the next stage, whether it was a relationship with a family member or a friend, or just in terms of the way I do certain things, even at work and in my business, suddenly things became easier. And one example that I can share is this thing of, I like control. And some people call it perfectionism, that sort of thing, where you want to, and I always say to people like, oh, I want to know how things work, so when things go wrong I can fix them, right? But actually sometimes, and what I've learned now is I don't need to know everything, and actually delegating things, giving things to other people to do, makes me move faster. And yeah, I was holding on to control when it was time for me to let go, because I'm now at a different level, and the things I should be focusing on are not the minutia anymore. It's about focusing on, the mid to high level stuff and giving those to other people. So, I'm not as tired as I used to be before, not as stressed, etc. And I guess that was my version of wearing shorts in winter.
Yeah. And it robs other people of their own opportunity as well.
Exactly.
So I remember I was leading something in my church, and I just like and you just have this thing where it's like, oh, I'm needed, I need to be here. And I looked over, and I remember one of my friends said, "Kid, it's time for you to move on from that thing that you're doing, because there's other people there that are right now and ripe to move into what you are doing." So she said, "It's you move or you're gonna get moved." so and I step back, and then you see and people come into themselves, and you can see them flourishing and prospering in whatever position they're in. Sometimes you have to move on. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's difficult to let go sometimes, but you have to. And I guess I always use an analogy of that seed that's planted deep in the ground. And when it's breaking ground to come out, as a plant, it actually has to really push through that ground to actually come through to the light. And I guess that's where we find a bit of this resistance, because we are that seed that's germinating, and it's a bit of a traumatic period, isn't it? And you don't know what you're gonna see when you come out from underground. But then that's when you start, the growth just accelerates. And before you know it, you're at a different level.
Control is just, it's not for us. It's not for us. I think control is always birthed from fear, and we're not supposed to operate
Definitely.
from that at all.
Yeah.
So we just grieve, mourn whatever you need to mourn. Let's get used to that in life and move on quickly. I know I'm talking like it's very easy. It's not, but you have no other choice. We've got no choice. So yeah, that's how
Yeah,
I feel.
and on that note, Keji, how do you actually support your clients? So do you have a program or do you do workshops? What is it? How can people sort of work with you?
It's so good. It's so good you asked that because for a long time I was just, like I said, just doing this. People come into my life and I was just doing this. So I am actually, well, I will be starting. In fact, I have started um some workshops already where we go through part of my. So I gave you 3 steps there, but there are actually more. But yeah, we go through some steps and processes as well. I try to encourage more group sessions because just to have that support from other people, and then we have like the few odd one-on-one sessions. But I I I tend to stray away from people being very dependent, and it's to become dependent on me because I just do like to foster people's independence and giving them the tools that any season that they go through, they can get through it. But mind you, we need support. So yes, I do workshops. I write material for people as well. So those are my main ways, and doing my IG lives as well.
Okay, yeah, I've been on one of your IG lives. Thank you. Was it, have I been twice? I can't remember now.
Twice,
We
twice.
talk all the time, yeah. And yes, and I've watched some of them. There's just you bring on some phenomenal guests who really, dig deep into, whatever subject it is that they're talking to you about. And it's I think it's such a great add-on to the work that you do with people in the group. I also know that you'll be launching a book, or is it out already? You'll tell us. So tell us a bit more about the book and how you believe it can support individuals who are going through transition.
So the book is called Allow Me to Interrupt. Yeah. People say, why'd you call it that? Because I feel that in the midst of transition, sometimes we need an interrupter. Somebody just shows up. I'm here to help you. And it's a, should I say, it's like a navigational handbook. And you can use it over and over again for your times of transition. So it it goes through and explains different types of transitions. So it gives you specific indicators where you can actually, that's the transition I'm going through right now. And it gives examples of how others have gone through it. It not just that, but it also gives you actionable things after that in order to go, because there's one thing knowing the information, but then how do you carry it out as well. I did have a date in mind. But it's definitely before the end of this year. There's just some back and forth with publishing anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how most things go, don't they? You have an
It's one
original
of the
date.
things where I try to do it all myself, do certain
Ooh,
things all by myself, and it came up to bite me in the butt. So, yes, I just, okay, let me reel it back. Yeah,
yeah, there was an interruption.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, great. Well, do let us know when it's due to launch, and I'll also like put information out there once it's launched so people can get hold of the book if they'd like to.
Thank
Uh,
you.
you are very welcome. Keji, as you know, I believe that in order to create true wealth, as you've also mentioned before, we need to be clear about what wealth means to us in every area of our life. So, in a few words, please, could you share with us what wealth means to you in terms of your physical, mental, spiritual, social, and financial well being?
You see, I call it soul health. That's what I see as wealth, because there's a particular scripture that it says, do you know what? For life, I can't remember where it is right now, but and I'm going to paraphrase, and I think it's Paul or Peter, or I can't remember who it was now, saying, "Brethren, I pray that in all things that you prosper as your soul prospers." And I remember when I first read that, I thought, what? Prosper as your soul prospers. And that prosperity is wealth to me. And it says, but you prosper as your soul prospers. Then if you look at really your soul, it's made up of your intellect, your will, your emotions. So I think once you've got those things right, once you've got your will intact, once you've got your mind, once you've got your emotions, once you've got your thinking and just who you are in your being intact and fully aligned, I think everything else flows from that. How you feel about yourself, your physical well-being, your spiritual well-being, everything else flows from that, your financial well-being as well. So how I call it is just soul health and sparked off from that scripture that you prosper in all things as your soul prospers. But it's as your soul prospers. Yeah. Yeah.
I absolutely love that soul health. That I love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm going to look up the scripture and I'll actually put it in the show notes as well. So we've got the right references to it. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that, Keji. Now, how can listeners get in touch with you if they want to work with you or watch your IG lives?
Okay. So yeah, usually on platforms, it's the Wealth Encourager. The Wealth Encourager. That's that's where you find me, the Wealth Encourager. If you want to connect with me. Also, if you want to connect with me, if you go to my IG page, the Wealth Encourager, I have my Social Tap account, and from there you can email me, book appointments as well. You can, and then again, if you want to contact me personally, then it's Keji Castano on my Facebook account as well, but everywhere. Yeah.
The Wealth Encourager. Brilliant. I will put links to your Instagram and Facebook in the show notes. Keji, thank you so much for coming onto the Wealth Conversation podcast. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And I know that people out there who are listening to the podcast who are in a period of transition are going to at least find, or at least they've found some sort of guidance, with your 3Ps, and will be coming to you for advice, I'm sure, or at least following you to just allow you to interrupt, hopefully, once in a
Yeah.
while and support them
Yeah.
in their transition.
Yeah, hopefully, when chains go ping 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 ping, or when things start clicking, you have those moments like, oh, she gets it, she understands what yeah, hopefully there's lots of those going on with whoever's listening right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I remember the first time we spoke and you mentioned the whole thing about transition. It was literally light bulb moment. And I saw flashing in front of my eyes all the periods in my life where, I was so confused about what's going on. And actually it was that middle bit, between where I was and where I was actually going. And I didn't have a word to call it. I didn't know what it was.
Yes, I think it's just all the what do they call it? Not the verbiage. Is that what you say? Is it the verbiage or the right? Yeah, the words for it.
Mhm.
Most people don't, and that's what I found when I was going through transitions. I don't know what I'm doing here. Am I doing the right thing? What's happening with me? I don't feel with him. I don't feel right within myself. What's changing with me?
Yeah.
It's just what we go through. It is just what we go through, and it is okay. It's fine. You are completely normal. Absolutely nothing to worry about. Yeah, and it's just somebody saying you're normal. This is okay. It's all right to be confused. It's cool. It's fine.
Oh, it's fine. Yes, indeed. Well, I'll be asking you back so you can share about the book and give us more insights into what we should be doing when we are going through that period of transition. Yeah.
So can I just say one thing?
Go ahead.
Yes. So when I was writing the book, just because I feel the unction to say it, so I'm going to say it. Just when I was writing the book, there was a particular because I write about different types of transition. There's one part in particular which I couldn't quite finish, and I didn't know why. And that particular transition I call the metamorphosis. And at the time, I thought I'd finish a book, but at the time I was going through this metamorphosis transition. Anyway, the more I went through it, you know, those type of transitions you go through and you feel like you are a completely different person. You feel like nothing about you is the same. In fact, wherever that the things you used to do, you actually, you can't do it anymore because it feels like you've literally changed from a caterpillar into a butterfly. So as I was writing the book, and I think this is one of the reasons why I couldn't quite finish it, I felt like the Holy Spirit just highlighted to me, that's not a transition, that is a transformation. So I don't know whether there's someone probably listening and you feel like everything within you is tugging, you feel like everything about you is it's not even about where you are, who you're interacting with, it's about you as a person. You feel like all your value systems have completely been just destroyed at the root. And most likely, that's probably not a transition you're going through. Maybe it's a transformation. So, and what I usually say, it's the unveiling of who you are really. It's the absolute unveiling of yourself. And by the end of that, be encouraged. It can be very isolating at that time with that particular transformation. It can be isolating. It can feel like every single part of you has been ripped to complete shreds. It's okay, because your butterfly season is about to emerge.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Connect with me at The Wealth Conversation on Facebook and Instagram so we can continue the discussion. Also, if you're ready to define what wealth truly means to you, then go to thewealthconversation.com and download the Wealth Cornerstones guide. Until next week, stay focused on becoming the designer of your financial future.